possible.
And the crowd absolutely love it. We're heading into the wall. He's got it. He's got it. This is why we love Formula One.
What is it about Lando Norris and safety cars here at the Miami Grand Prix around the Hard Rock Stadium? And look at that, we've got blue sky now, but it was a deluge earlier on, and that very much set the scene for a chaotic sprint race. A McLaren 1-2 with Lewis Hamilton in third. That does not even tell a tenth of the story after a stunning sprint here at the Hard Rock Stadium. Let's get into it and give you all the reaction here on the post-sprint show. And welcome down to a hot and humid and buzzing Miami Grand Prix paddock. Ruth Buscombe alongside me and Chris Medland as well to talk through all that we have seen. First of all, guys, just a reaction to that race. I'm barely drawing breath, to be honest.
I said just be patient, didn't I? When we were waiting for the red flag, I was like, it'll get good. I also said that we're guaranteed action when we were on the grid. And then it was a slow burner, wasn't it, for a little while? And then it came alive. I mean, you used the word crossover, probably the bane of Ruth's life, which she was a strategist, trying to time crossovers, get them right, get them wrong. Brilliant for us watching, seeing people get it right and wrong in that race.
Ruth, a strategy masterclass, indecision. Where did you see it? Where was the race won in a strategy call today?
For me, the real genesis of the strategy genius started on lap 10. I thought it was phenomenal the way that Red Bull pulled Yuki Tsunoda in with the car that was further back to test the conditions. And then I think the next level was Lewis. That Ferrari team, they have been criticized in the past for strategic decisions. That was a huge win. They reacted straight away, pulled him in on lap 11. We're running the numbers, and I think that was a really special call, and it could have even been a win without the safety car.
The soft tyre gamble to get on it. I think Alex Jakes hit about a 13 out of 10 in exuberance when he saw how fast Lewis Hamilton was going out there. And then, of course...
a wild Ollie Bearman appears.
I have no idea who that was going to be. Thank goodness it's Ollie Bearman.
Just like Ollie's start, you just snuck through the middle out of nowhere.
Yeah, I tend to be a bit sneaky.
Yeah, that played off on track and just then as well.
Ollie, welcome along. Congratulations, P20 from qualifying yesterday, and then you finished that race up there in the points, P8. Let's start with the start. You snuck through, didn't you? How did you get through that gap? Did you breathe in? We all did.
Yeah, I took a deep breath, or exhaled a deep breath. Honestly, I couldn't really see what was happening at the start. So when I exited turn 1 and I'd overtaken some cars, I was pretty happy. But the visibility was quite poor on lap 1. Really poor, in fact. And I just managed to overtake someone, so that was good.
I love that you couldn't see, and your only thought in your head was, right, I'll just send it then. I can't see, and let's just hope for the best. That's a racing driver for you.
Yeah, that's a standard approach.
How tough was it out there through, of course, the rain and the visibility toward the start, but then equally at the crossover point and getting that right?
Yeah, I think, I told the guys before the race that the track would dry or that I expect to get onto the slick at some point just because of the ambient temperature. It's so humid right now and so hot that it was quite clearly...
You're going to see your star in just a moment. There you are.
Yeah, look, the gap was there, but then it was closing and it was tight.
The on-board replay is really good.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not really good, but...
It's good for us, maybe.
Exactly. But no, I had really good pace on the last 3 or 4 laps of the Inter. That's when the tyre started to cliff because the track dried. And that was the key to scoring points today, I think, because I managed to overtake 3 or 4 cars on 3 or 4 laps and then get onto the slick on the right time and not get undercut by Tsunoda. So great job by the team.
It could be P7 as well. We know that Liam Lawson's under investigation for what happened with Fernando Alonso. You were right behind that.
Yeah, I had front row seats on that.
What did you make of that collision?
No comment.
Oh,
good
very
boy,
diplomatic.
Ollie. Excellent. I would recommend.
Why does the former team member says, well done, I'm there as journalist. Go on, get stuck in.
Yeah, that's a real journalist.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say, though, the way that you were then battling, how hard was it on slicks when there's only really one dry line? Were you ever going to really go forward after that pit stop?
No, it was tough to go forward. I think the thing is not to go backwards. I came out the pits with Tsunoda right on my my tail. And then you just have to get through sector 1. And once you can basically get into turn 4, I had him on my right. just against the wall, and then I had the dry line, you know, at turn 4. And after that, it was really tough because there was really one line to break, one line to go in the straight. So that's fortunate if you're defending, of course unfortunate if you're trying to attack.
Ollie, we had a little strategy briefing in Melbourne about what you need to do in terms of communication with your race engineer in those conditions. And first off, well done. You did a very good job today.
Yeah.
Secondly, can you explain to everyone just how difficult it is when the race engineer or your strategist are saying on numbers it's ready to go for slicks, but you're in the car as a driver and it looked for me like turn 4, turn 5, maybe 11 into 16 was a bit wet. How do you communicate that as a driver whilst also overtaking half the field?
Yeah, that's a tough thing. You need to be smart. That's why I'm not very good at it. But no, the difficulty is that the inter is getting worse and worse. So actually, as the track gets better, you're not necessarily going faster. So you can't really tell. Sometimes, especially with a track like this, the color of the asphalt makes it really hard to tell if it's dry or wet. And since you're just sliding around on an overheated tire, you're not really sure what's going on. So you have to wait for the first guy to jump on the slick. I saw 2 cars boxing in front of me. Then I asked how many laps were to go. He said 7, and I said, there's no way we're going to do 7 laps on an Inter. So I was like, guys, we have to pit, and I think they were going to call me in anyway.
Well, in that case, you all owe Yuki Tsunoda a beer for jumping on that slick tyre first.
Exactly.
Look, Ollie, it's a sprint weekend, so very limited learnings in terms of race pace from free practice with just that one session, and obviously 2 qualifying sessions to get ready for. We've just had a race in the wet, most of it done on an Inter tyre. What on earth do you know about the race pace for tomorrow's Grand Prix? And do you think it may yet rain again, because it's still around?
Yeah, it's tough to tell. You know, the Sunshine State providing lots of rain. Yeah, I think our race pace seemed okay on Friday. The long ones honestly felt really good, and the car felt nice and predictable, which is always nice. Tough to say what the weather will do, but in case of a dry race, I'm pretty confident. The main thing would be just to have a clean qualifying, because I didn't have that yesterday. You know, I didn't make I took the flag before starting my lap, so you know, a clean quali, try and qualify. I think where we would be a good start, and then. Yeah, see what the race brings.
Yeah, you forget after such action we've seen, we've actually still got qualifying to go, so we'll let you go and rest up for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ollie. Well
Bye.
done.
Thanks, Ollie.
Thanks for such a wonderful entrance to the show. Honestly, I didn't know who it was. It could have been anybody at that point, and I thought, let's just roll with this.
The fear in your eyes.
I thought it may have been a fan,
like
it could have been anybody.
Do you know what? I think he was just kind of redoing the race start. Like, I feel like
Sneaking
Yuki
in.
Tsunoda right now.
I was like, boy, who is this
He
going
went
to
for
be?
the gap. He went for the gap.
He went for
Proper
the
racing
gap, he
driver.
got straight in. Love it. Okay, let's take a look back then at the highlights of that sprint race. This might take up all the show, to be honest.
That does seem to be a lot of standing water. He's in the wall. That is an extraordinary sight. Charles Leclerc has damaged that Ferrari. And the sprint in Miami is underway. Good and even reaction time for the front row, but Oscar Piastri's diving to the inside. The top 2, side by side, and Antonelli goes off at the first turn. He loses 3 positions. As everyone else is looking after the tyres, these 2 scrapping lap after lap after lap. And this time, Sainz is able to go deep. He went past, he went deep, and we go again. And that's a collision in the pit lane and damage on the front wing for the world champion, Max Verstappen, with damage on the car. We've got a yellow flag out on the circuit, and there is Carlos Sainz, who's got the puncher. All the while we're going to battle for the lead, and a jump over the chicane for Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri comes in and take on medium tyres. Hamilton going around Max Verstappen, and the Ferrari fires through. Fernando Alonso into the barriers at turn 12 at the exact moment that the safety car is deployed. Lando Norris has changed the slick tyres, and Lando Norris has got to get to the control line first. And I think Lando did it. And Lando Norris wins once again in Miami.
Oh, well, there you go. Breathless stuff from start to finish, from that rainy grid to Lando Norris putting his hands in the air and winning this sprint race once again with the use of a safety car, just proving a pivotal moment within this race. And the need for him, he pitted before it came out. It came out virtually as he was coming into the pit lane. He had to then simply get out of the pit lane, Ruth, by the time that Oscar was coming through, and he just did it.
I just feel so sorry for poor Oscar. It's happened
He
to
did
him
nothing wrong in a
twice
sense.
now. He's such a nice boy. I just feel so sorry for him. As a strategist, you know, a safety car should neutralise the racing. Poor kid's been done twice. Maybe tomorrow will be the one. But yeah, as you say, that's exactly what happened. McLaren, I think, were cutting their losses. You know, they had a 25.7 second gap to Lewis Hamilton, so they did have time to bring in Lando, even without that safety car. But they were reacting. They were on the back foot. They had 2 cars to bring in. Lewis was going 6 seconds a lap, as we see, 6 seconds a lap faster. It was the purple lap than the McLaren. So they had to react. If they carried on at that pace, you know, they would have lost the gap. So.
And there's the crucial line we just saw on the screen there, the white line exiting the pit lane that Lando wanted to be ahead of Oscar at. And I love the way that such a dramatic race came down to 2 people essentially on a speed limiter who was going to get somewhere first, because Oscar at that point is going to already be looking...
Following rules is exciting,
Exactly.
Chris,
Yes, exactly.
and I will not have anything of that.
It was, the delta was what Oscar will be looking at, but at the same time, like, how close to it can he get? Lando just sat on the limiter. But yeah, that's where it all came down to. It was so close.
And Oscar said, I won't be buying any lottery tickets here in Miami. He's not got any luck here, it seems, certainly when a safety car is involved. He did have, not luck, but a hell of a lot of skill off the start, didn't he? Once again, he made that corner his own and snatched it from Kimi Antonelli. Here it is again.
Yeah, I feel bad for my prediction that Kimi Antonelli was going to win this sprint, because it disappeared literally here, didn't it? Kimi's trying. He wants to almost show that he's not going to be bullied out the way by Oscar there, but he'd already lost the high ground into that corner. Piastri, very smart with the way he handled it. Kimi complained on the radio he was forced off, but he did not have the right to stay on track. I think Jolyon made a very good point, didn't he, in commentary? He said, I think if he had his chance again, he'll look at it and go, I should have slotted in there and maybe only lose 1 position rather than 3. But Kimi's a rookie. He's learning. He's going to go through these phases.
I disagree. I think he did a good job there, because it's a sprint, right? That car in 3 hours after the sprint is going to have to qualify for the main race. And what Toto came on and said on the radio was really interesting, because he said, baby race, big race later. So I think that was actually a deliberate decision from the team that advised him, when it was tricky, if you're going to lose position, don't worry about it, back off and protect the car. I think it was that.
Oh, but I still thought he could have backed off and slotted in behind, if that makes sense. But I see your point.
I'm just
I guess
very
you put
safe.
yourself,
I'm
you
just
put yourself
very
in trouble,
safe.
don't you, there,
Yeah,
if you do slow
Yeah,
that much.
Jolyon's point was, if he just backed out of it, he could have maybe held P2,
Yeah.
whether he'd have held it ultimately through what was then a chaotic race. Who knows? Ultimately, though, of course, Antonelli then had that moment in the pit lane as well with Max Verstappen, basically having a drive-through pit stop because he couldn't actually get into his pit box to change his tyres. I don't think this will be a very happy Kimi Antonelli, but we'll hear from him.
Hey Kimi, well, commiserations. I felt for you, obviously, firstly at turn 1, and then that moment in the pit lane as well. Just talk me through those moments and just the feeling that you've got right now.
Oh, I keep knocking out your phone. Yeah, it was very disappointing. I think lap 1, turn 1 was a bit over the limit, the move. But it's good to know for the future, honestly. And then about the pit lane, you know, it was very unfortunate. Nothing to blame on Max because he just got released. So, you know, he respected the order. And what I did is, as soon as I saw him coming out, I just tried to avoid the crash because, you know, definitely it could have been a really bad accident for the mechanics. So happy nothing went wrong there. And yeah, now eyes into qualifying.
Well, hard luck and best luck for quali.
What a mature response there to say, look, nothing on Max, it was an unsafe release, but I'm really glad the mechanics are okay as well. Just 18 years old, he started on pole, ultimately tumbling out of the points even, and it's not what he'd have wanted. He gets another bite of the apple, of course, in qualifying later. What will he have learned, Chris, do you think, from that sprint race?
I think there will have been a little bit about, we've already talked, like the racecraft at turn 1. He'll look back at it and understand it one way or another, but I think the way that it happened with Max, like you say, I'm surprised at how mature he is. He's 18 years old, and I'd be really upset right now at that point that this incident happened that's really cost me at least good points. But to think of like a driver, like Max is reacting to what he's told, he's done nothing wrong, essentially it's on the team. Fair play to him for saying that, but it's so costly in terms of points. I think Toto actually handled this very well as well, as Ruth mentioned, getting on the radio and saying, hey, don't overly stress it right now. You know, big points on offer tomorrow. Let's just take some learnings from this. But yeah, his race is unraveled with that contact.
The support that Kimi has, the arms that are wrapped around him in the good and the bad moments from Mercedes is impressive. Max Verstappen finished P4, but ultimately with a 10-second penalty ends up P17 out of a points-paying position in a sprint race. What will Red Bull have learned from that? You heard the exclamation over the radio, guys, come on.
Well, I don't think they've learned very much from Max Verstappen's race. As you say, like, you know, it's just human error. And it's so interesting. You know, yesterday we had the torches left in the car with Lando Norris. You know, these tiny, tiny margins. You know, it's just a human error. It's a tiny mistake. You know, these guys are making hundreds and hundreds of decisions, hundreds of actions, and it's just one can derail everything. But what I do think they might have learned is they changed Yuki Tsunoda's car. It started from Parc Fermé. Now, with this season's sprint regulations, they can do a change for the setup for this afternoon. Now, I saw a certain Max Verstappen was the second driver in, I believe, this morning, him and Lewis Hamilton. So potentially, they've learned something about the setup that they've applied on Yuki Tsunoda's car, they've done some homework, and that maybe they're going to have a very different Red Bull this afternoon in qualifying than they did yesterday. So maybe not all bad.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's hear from Max.
Hey Max, obviously a frustrating afternoon. I won't try to sugarcoat it. Just talk me through that moment in the pits, obviously when you made contact with Kimi, and just the frustration that you obviously dropped down and weren't able to score today.
Yeah, I mean the race itself was pretty boring. There was not much going on for me, you know, just doing my own thing, seeing the McLarens disappear and just keeping the gap to the cars behind. I think then the call, of course, I got the slicks was good. Could have maybe risked it a bit more, but in my position at that time in P3, you don't really need to do that in a sprint. But then, yeah, the pit stop, I mean, it was super clear, right, what happened. I don't even need to really explain it, it's super clear. So, yeah, it's not what you want to see.
Hard luck, thank you.
That was a short, sharp Max, as to be expected after a disappointing sprint race. But as Toto said, that was the mini race. The big one is tomorrow, qualifying to come. Everyone's got to reset from what we've seen earlier on today, including the weather, which is now brightening up a little bit. Lewis Hamilton then, and Ferrari, as you mentioned, Ruth, with that gamble to put him on slicks and the soft, importantly. One of just a few drivers to go on the soft, many on the medium. Do you believe that Lewis may have had the pace to win this race on that soft tyre without the safety car intervention?
Yes, I do. I can't say how great I think that call is. Honestly, I think it was phenomenal. Lewis came in, and there's two things. So one, the McLarens had to come in. If they didn't come in, it was very clear he's going 6 seconds a lap faster. He would have won the race. There was more than, he would have caught in 4 laps and just sliced through them. So let's assume the McLarens boxed both cars. So they already boxed Oscar on lap 13. Now they box Lando on lap 14. That car was 25.7 seconds ahead. But Lewis's tyres were warm, and the warm-up slope is really hot here. So actually, I reckon he still would have done it. I think he would have won. I think it would have been his second sprint win of the season. And I think him and Oscar are going to have like a kind of anti-safety car dance.
The thing is with Lewis as well, like that call was so good from Ferrari because he was struggling so much on the Inter. He had, like Max said, not really worth it for him from third to make that gamble. For Lewis, it was. But I do wonder, something that Ollie said, would it have been dry enough for him to go around other cars that weren't struggling as much as Max was with damage, so the two McLarens? Would he have been brave enough, I guess, to risk third for second, definitely for the win?
Yeah, it's Lewis.
But as Ollie said, there's one dry line, it makes it tougher. But obviously, the longer we're racing, at racing speeds, because obviously we lost that with the safety car, you then get more of the track drying, a bit more opportunity. So it would have been a fascinating last couple of laps.
And DRS was enabled. For me, I think by the time we got there, he would have swamped past them. And again, remember, it is different for Lewis. Max mentioned in that, it's a sprint in my position, I can't take a risk. Yes, maybe we would have gone the lap before. You know, we've got both McLarens and Max at the moment, seemingly the candidates locked into the championship battle. Lewis, right now, this wins.
Good point, though, as well, in terms of Max. That's a lot of points lost. 7 and 8, respectively, to the two McLarens today because of that penalty. That is costly. That's getting beaten comfortably to a win in the race, isn't it? So he'll be seething in that sense. But as you say, then that means for Lewis, it was worth the gamble.
Another podium for Ferrari in a sprint race. Of course, Charles Leclerc with the podium last time out in the Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc not even taking the start. And Chris, you and I were on the grid and we didn't have access to a screen, and we just heard Jakesy scream, "Someone's in the wall!" And this was the moment that Charles Leclerc, and he said, didn't he, in the interview, "I was just a passenger. I had no control. I was completely aquaplaning." And he said the car was out of control. Was he pushing a bit too hard in that sense, or did the car just come away from him in the conditions?
I don't think he was pushing too hard. I mean, you could always say, well, if you've crashed, you're pushing too hard, but you know, tyres need to be warm. You need to be using the pace and the performance of a car to get it to turn. I really don't think he was. I just think it was aquaplaning. It could have been a slightly different line to Lewis that neither of them were really thinking about, and a bit of a river at the wrong time, and you're sliding wide.
Do you have to wonder then, and it's a really difficult one, because the rain really started coming down as the light turned green, and I think the Ferraris were out really early on, but they were on that Inter tyre. Do you have to think, why did you put them on that intermediate? Should they have been on the wets like most others were? Should they have waited to see the conditions and let someone else gauge them?
It's tricky, right? Because when you have the full race, you have multiple laps to grid. So it's quite an easy one. You go out on the safe X-Wet tyre, you test it, you have time to push the car back in and go back out on the Inter. With the sprint format, it's a lap to grid singular, so you have one go. So actually, you know, it shows that level of aggression that we saw with the strategy call that worked really well from them. They wanted to find out if the Inter was possible, and we've seen, you know, multiple times in races that information can be race defining. So yes, you know, you get the outcome, it's not great, but, you know, I do think there was kind of a logical process behind it. Should they have maybe waited and let someone else go first? That's what I normally did. I used to always wait.
I was about to say, are you looking at the radar as well? Because we talk about the timing of the deluge being unfortunate, but surely the radar might have hinted at it. Are you looking at that even for your laps to the grid?
Yeah, I mean, we always used to just I mean, we were at the end of the pit lane too, so we just used to let someone else go first, and we were used to running in spray as well, so we didn't ever have to practice being the first car.
I'd 100% have played it safe, and that's probably why I'm not a strategist and I'm standing here instead. Other DNFs then, as well as Charles Leclerc, who didn't even take the start, was Carlos Sainz with a puncture that left debris, didn't it, all over kind of turn 13 to 15, that really tricky chicane with the infamous cone bollard, and then of course Fernando Alonso as well with that big off. Here's Carlos Sainz then just nicking the wall, and ultimately the puncture saw him limp back to the pits.
Yeah, this was a shame for Carlos, because you can see he was competitive. You know, he's trying to line up and overtake there. He's trying to position the car, and that's a big error because of the damage it's done. But again, kind of in a sprint, I think sometimes I like to see it when drivers are taking those risks and they're thinking, I can get some points here. I think, in a sense, it means more for some of those midfield teams that are fighting for 7th and 8th in a race if that opportunity comes up. I mean, his teammate, Alex Albon, brilliant result today, and that's a big point of haul of points for that team to get, whereas we've been talking about maybe the top 4 teams and playing it more safe. It was worth him pushing that hard, looking to gain positions, but yeah, just too much.
And you can't really see from TV, but that chicane is actually almost half blind, because it's actually, as you say, it's one of the only bits of the track that's got any elevation around here. So with the wet conditions, we haven't really had any racing here in the wet before, so everyone's learning on the job. I think that actually meant that the lineup was slightly wrong, because you see he hooks over the curb. I think it's actually quite difficult to see, combined with the elevation and the spray from the cars in front. So I agree with you. I think he lines it up, but main qualifying is in 3 hours. Now you've potentially justified, you know, the big one, as Toto Wolff would say.
Honestly, we've never had a race here in the wet. It's a sprint weekend. We've got absolutely no data from FP1.
Laura's
That's amazing, isn't it?
It's great. I like this. We said to James Bowles, didn't we, on the grid, and he was like worried about how they were going to look at the crossover. He was saying between full wet and then Inter, and
Chris and I are rubbing our hands in glee at
no
him.
data, and I'm like, brilliant, we love this. Sorry, but we do.
But the great thing is no one has data. You know, you've got to reframe that champion mindset, Chris. That, you know, when you have a free practice, everyone has 3 free practice worth of data. When everyone has 1 free practice worth of data, even if you don't model the situation perfectly, racing is a relative experience. You just have to do it slightly better than your competitors.
But that's what we like, is when you see people having to react on the fly, I think. As fans, journalists, that you kind of watch that, and I guess it's what brings the best out of teams sometimes. Is it more satisfying when you don't know for sure, and you're going a bit more on gut and experience and feel, and collectively you get it right? Or is it when it's the data that's driven you to a decision that you prefer?
I have to be careful here, because I do believe that the gallery does have audio of me going box now, because I was being asked when we were going to get to the crossover, and F1 would have boxed the car on lap 11, by the way, just so you're all aware.
There we go. Right on
we would have brought our car in on lap 11, but yeah. So yeah, the answer is yes, it's great. We love it and we live for it. Pressure is a privilege, and it was super exciting.
Yeah, it was. And on the other side of the Williams garage, Alex Albon up to P4. Now, he does have a safety car procedural investigation ongoing. We'll see if he can keep hold of that P4. He'll definitely be hoping so. What a race. Here he is.
Alex, well, congratulations. I said you were good in the rain, in the pit lane, didn't I? Great performance out there. You must be delighted with P4 and the way it all kind of came together.
Yeah, really happy. We need to see. I think I'm under investigation right now, so that's why I boxed out. But really happy. I feel like in these conditions, it reminds me of Australia, where we just do very calculated risks, and we chose the right moment. We were quick on track as well. I think at one point we were looking to get past Lewis. So yeah, very happy. Let's see. I think there's not much that we can learn from today or this morning for this afternoon. but really good points nevertheless. Yeah, I think just getting these kind of points on the board is what we could have hoped for Sunday. So to get them earlier is very happy.
Very happy, tentatively so perhaps, because obviously he's just waiting to see whether there will be any penalty or otherwise after that safety car? Yeah, the safety car infringement. Alonso, just a moment for that, because it was a hefty whack, and I'm just checking the time before we've got to get ready for our pre-qualifying show. They've got to get ready for qualifying. It's a very tight turnaround now with the delays. Will you be heading straight down there, Chris, to get some information for us, please?
Yeah, we'll see what the team will say. I'll drop a message to them. Head down there, just get on WhatsApp. But I will admit, yeah, I think with the delays, that's the bit that's going to squeeze it, isn't it? If this had run at the normal time, because we delayed the start to get the race in, then that's put more pressure on the team with a smaller window. But yeah, they're used to turning things around fairly quickly. Ruth will know what the garage will be like a bit better than me in terms of how stressed they'll be, but I reckon they'll be okay to get that car ready and get it out in qualifying. As looking at the damage, because if you remember the crash we had in FP1 with Ollie Bearman as well, it's actually relatively low speed. But it does do a hefty bit to the front end of the car.
What I've learned since being in broadcasting is it's absolutely impossible to tell when you look from the outside of a Formula One car, because I've always had the data on the inside. So, yeah, I have no idea. Because you look at something that looks fairly innocuous, but then when you're in a team, you obviously know straight away if you've seen it trigger an element. You already know if there's something that's gone wrong with like a suspension element, or you can see from telemetry that, you know, a gearbox is damaged. Whereas from the outside, it looks pretty fine. So I would tentatively now say, watch this space.
There we go. We've got both sides covered. Everyone, we covered both sides there.
Perfect. Let's hear from your sprint race winner, Lando Norris.
Perfect timing for not the first side today, Lando. Congrats on the win. I know the safety car was there, but your pace on the inters and the way you kind of looked after them kind of set it up. How pleased are you with how it came out today?
Yeah, no, I was very pleased. You know, good start, good lap one, and the pace was good throughout. Like, obviously a bit of management with the inters. Especially in the dirty air for Moscow, you know, you have to manage quite a lot. But to have the pace as strong as it was at the end was perfect. It gave me the opportunity to still do a very good in-lap before the safety car came out. But yeah, I mean, it's my luck here in Miami, so I'll take it. But the pace was very good and the best on track today, so that's the biggest positive.
Great work. Thank you.
When it comes to Abu Dhabi, will we look back at a race weekend like this in terms of how the momentum swings between those two McLaren drivers? We'll have to wait and see, won't we? Here's the schedule then for the remaining part of this Miami Grand Prix weekend. And it's on to the Grand Prix weekend. Pre-qualifying show at 3:30. We better get ready. And then qualifying coming at 4 p.m. The post-qualifying show immediately afterwards. And on to race day, 10 to 3 for the start for the pre-race show, 10 minutes earlier than some race weekends. And then a 4 p.m. race start. And do not miss all the reaction in the post-race show. Do make sure you head onto the website as well. Go to F1 Unlocked. If you sign up, you could be in with a chance of winning tickets to a red carpet experience in New York at the F1 movie premiere. I'm going to be there as well. I absolutely can't wait. So do come along and join us. Sign up to F1 Unlocked and be in with a chance of doing so. We are going to get ready for pre-qualifying and reset our brains, as are most of the people here, teams and drivers as well. Thank you to Chris. Thank you to Ruth. Thanks to Lawrence as well in the media pen asking the tough questions. Do not miss qualifying a little bit later on today. We'll see you then.
This is the Miami Grand Prix. Are you ready?
Let's go. Lights out.
Don't mess up.